remarriage, and I did not want to imagine problems that did not exist. Still, I noticed small changes. Daniel began traveling more often. Some business trips lasted only one night, while others continued through the weekend. His explanations always sounded reasonable. Construction projects could easily change their schedules. One Saturday morning, I decided to surprise him by bringing lunch to his office. I packed sandwiches, fruit, and his favorite cookies. When I arrived, his assistant looked confused. She politely told me that Daniel had left several hours earlier for an important meeting outside the city. That answer surprised me because he had told me he would spend the entire day at the office. I felt uncomfortable, but I quickly created excuses in my mind. Maybe the meeting had appeared unexpectedly. Maybe he simply forgot to tell me. When he came home that evening, I mentioned my visit to his office. For just 1 second, I saw fear in his eyes. Then he smiled and explained that his client had changed the meeting location at the last minute. Everything had happened so quickly that he forgot to call me. His explanation sounded possible. I accepted it. Looking back, I realize I accepted many things because I wanted to believe him. Sometimes love makes us ignore the questions that should be asked. Life continued normally for several more months. Then something happened that completely changed everything. One afternoon, I was cleaning our home office while Daniel attended another business meeting. I wanted to organize old paperwork before tax season. Inside one desk drawer, I found several folders containing building plans. As I lifted the folders, a single photograph slipped onto the floor. I bent down and picked it up. It showed Daniel standing beside a little girl who looked about 7 or 8 years old. They were smiling exactly the same way. The girl had his dark hair, his eyes. Even the shape of her face looked incredibly familiar. On the back of the photograph, someone had written only 3 simple words: "Happy birthday, Lily." My heart suddenly felt heavy. I turned the picture over several times, hoping I had misunderstood something. Perhaps she was his niece. Perhaps she was a friend's daughter. There had to be a simple explanation. But one detail refused to leave my mind. The way Daniel was holding her did not feel distant. It looked natural, comfortable, loving, almost like a father holding his own child. For several minutes, I simply sat on the floor with the photograph in my hands. I remembered every secret phone call, every unexpected trip, every nervous expression, every explanation I had accepted without asking another question. For the first time in our marriage, I wondered if I truly knew the man I had promised to spend my life with. That single photograph had quietly opened a door that I was no longer sure I wanted to walk through. Still, I knew one thing. Sooner or later, I had to discover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. That evening, I placed the photograph back inside the folder, exactly where I had found it. My hands were shaking while I closed the drawer. I wanted to believe that I had imagined everything. I wanted to think there was a simple explanation that would make the fear disappear. Instead, my mind became louder. When Daniel came home, he greeted me with a warm smile and kissed my forehead as he always did. I studied his face while he spoke about his day. Everything looked normal. He laughed while telling me about a difficult client. He asked what I had cooked for dinner. He even thanked me for cleaning the house. I wondered how one person could seem so calm while another person's heart was breaking. I almost showed him the photograph that night. Several times I opened my mouth to ask about Lily. Each time I stopped myself. I realized I was not ready to hear the answer. That night, I slept very little. Daniel was sleeping peacefully beside me, but I kept staring at the ceiling. Questions filled my mind one after another. Who was Lily? Why had he hidden her photograph? Why had he never spoken her name? And the biggest question of all, was she really his child? The next morning, Daniel left early for another meeting. As soon as the front door closed, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. I decided to think carefully instead of acting with anger. One lesson I have learned in life is that strong emotions can lead to poor decisions. When we are hurt, we often imagine the worst before we know the whole story. I reminded myself that I needed facts, not guesses. Still, finding facts was not easy. For the next several days, I paid more attention to Daniel's routine. I noticed that he often checked his phone before breakfast. Sometimes he smiled at a message. Sometimes he looked worried. Whenever I entered the room, he quickly locked the screen. He had never behaved this way before. One Friday afternoon, he told me he needed to travel for 2 days because a construction project outside the city required his attention. I smiled and wished him a safe trip. As soon as he drove away, I felt guilty. I had already decided that I would follow him. I had never imagined doing something like this.
Trust had always been important to me, but trust had already begun to disappear. I waited 15 minutes before getting into my own car. I stayed far enough behind him that he would not notice me. Instead of driving toward the highway, where he usually traveled for work, he turned toward a quiet neighborhood on the other side of town. My heart started beating faster. He parked near a small park surrounded by simple houses. I parked farther away and watched from inside my car. After a few minutes, I saw him walking toward one of the houses. The front door opened before he reached it. A little girl ran outside. She threw her arms around him. Daniel lifted her into the air and both of them laughed. I recognized her immediately. She was the little girl from the photograph, Lily. I felt as if all the air had left my body. I could not hear their voices from where I was sitting, but I did not need to. Their smiles said enough. Daniel was not meeting a client. He was visiting Lily. A woman appeared in the doorway a few moments later. She looked around my age. She smiled politely at Daniel before inviting him inside. The three of them disappeared into the house together. I remained in my car for almost an hour. I could not think clearly. Tears filled my eyes, but I did not let myself cry. I simply stared at the house. Every happy memory from my marriage suddenly felt uncertain. Had everything been a lie? Had Daniel been living 2 different lives? Eventually, I drove home without waiting for him to leave. I was afraid that if I saw him again with Lily, my heart would completely